Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Nurturing Minds. I'm Dr. Blanka Kellermayer, and as a neuroscientist and parenting coach and mother of two very active boys, I'm passionate about bridging the gap between brain science and everyday parenting challenges. Today is our sixth episode already with Dr. Sonali Dasgupta, and I'm very excited about today's topic because it is very relevant in today's parenting in the digital age. So, before we dive in, would you please introduce yourself to our viewers and also mention your work with STEM Monsters Education? Sonali?
Thank you so much, Dr. Blanka. Thank you. I'm Dr. Sonali Dasgupta, a research scientist turned educator, a mentor to talented teenagers, and the founder of STEM Monsters Education Platform. With the STEM Monsters Education Platform, we work with schools to implement hands-on STEM programs that foster interdisciplinary innovation, encourage curiosity by focusing on design thinking and a first principles approach to learning. Before we move any further with today's topic, which is very, very close to my heart as well, because I see and work with a lot of students in this age, which we call the digital age, and struggle with screen time. So this is a topic which is very close to me as an educator and a parent, and I'm sure that Blanka also shares a very similar concern about this, as well as how do we deal about it. This is a topic we need to talk about. I want to make a disclaimer. Blanka, I want to make a disclaimer for all our guests over here. Neither I nor Dr. Blanka, we are not clinicians. The insights and suggestions that we share today are based on scientific research, our own experiences as parenting consultant or an educator, and our values. If you believe that your child is at risk, whether due to screen addiction, cyberbullying, or unsafe online interactions, we would urge you to seek professional support. So please do not consider the insights as a medical advice. It is an advice, but not certified medical advice. So with that, let's jump in. And I'm sure that even without the medical advice, there is a lot of insight and key takeaways that our viewers can take back from this conversation. So, Blanka, we know this that screens are part of the modern life, right? So, how can we use them in a way that it supports rather than hinders child development? We are always talking about the negative parts of screen and keep them away, but I would like to start on a positive note. So, would you like to share how we can use screens in a way that supports the development of the child?
Yes, absolutely. And I agree with you. So, we shouldn't be viewing screens as something that's bad because it's a part of the lifestyle now. Like we do most things, we have to use our phones or computers for. So that's the reality. And I'd like to put us off to a start that we use this concept of everything in moderation. And it's not about banning screens, but about being intentional on how we use screens. And I hope to provide information to our viewers today about how we can be conscious as parents and educators on how our kids interact with screens and how we use them ourselves as well, so we develop healthy habits and model these healthy habits to our kids. So I think we should first start by breaking down what experts recommend in terms of screen time for different age groups. Sonali, would you like to get us started?
Sure. So essentially, what experts say is we can divide the children in four categories. And these categories are starting with the youngest ones, which is infants and toddlers up to the age of 24 months. And as per the US recommendation, absolutely recommended for the children who are younger than 18 months old. Zero screen time. I want to underline that fact. Once they are about 18 months of age, so 18 months to 24 months of age, only high educational content is okay for the students. But again, it should be limited to educational content with parental engagement. We will come back to how parental engagement can be constructed while the children are observing screen, but it should not be independent. It should be with an adult or a parent around them. And the next is the preschoolers, which is 2 to 5 years. Maximum screen time recommendation is 1 hour in a day. That's the maximum. That is not the norm. And again, the focus should be on educational content, not something to simply entertain the children. Screen is not entertainment for the younger ones.
Yeah.
Blanka, would you move on to the school age kids and the higher ones? What's the recommendation for them?
Yeah, so the recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics for school age kids, which is 5 to 12 years old, is 1 to 2 hours maximum per day. And this committee advises removing TVs from bedrooms and focusing on a mix of activities for these children, including outdoor play, so screen-free time, and family time. And then for our teenagers, so 13 and above, the recommendation is 2 hours per day maximum of non-educational screen use. So obviously our teenagers use their screens a lot for their schoolwork. So this is not taking that into account. But it's important to have open conversations with these kids about balancing recreational screen time with their other responsibilities.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Blanka. What we will do, this is for the viewers, because there is a wide range in how the child brain develops from when they are an infant to maybe a teenager. We are going to divide this conversation into two parts. Today, we are going to focus on the younger children, say up to 5, 6 years of age, maybe 7, 8, where until the time where they still need adult supervision when they're accessing screens and how they are accessing screens. So today's conversation is going to be limited to the younger children. And in the next episode, we'll talk about the teenagers and young adults. So, Blanka, I want to ask you, does this, whatever the recommendations that we have just talked about, zero screen time or even 1 hour per day for slightly older children, when we say older, again, 5 years of age, does this align with what you do at home? I mean, are there any challenges you face when setting the screen limits? Or maybe if there are any statistics that are out there about the phone use, smartphone use?
Yeah, so in my personal, in my home, we actually do align with much of these recommendations. And because with my husband and I, we've always been very conscious about using screens. And so my kids don't have their own devices yet. We actually don't have a TV, which might, be very strange.
So
for
how
some
old are
people.
your kids?
My kids are 8 and 4.
Okay.
And so yes, we limit screen time as well. And usually they don't have any screen time during the week, and they're allowed to watch some like shows and stuff on the weekends or on a Friday afternoon. But there are some scary statistics, and from the UK House of Commons committee report from last year, I found that screen use has been found to start as early as 6 months of age, which is mind-blowing to me. The other mind-blowing information was that 20% of children aged between 3 and 4 years old have their own smartphones. And this increases to 25% for children and young people. And 25% of these kids actually have some sort of behavioral addiction already, which is quite concerning. And that's why we are here today, to talk about what we need to look out for and how we can actually be more intentional about how we approach this.
Yeah, I'm shocked, really. Sorry.
Exactly. And there's one more even crazier statistic, which is that children between the ages of 5 to 16 spend at least 6 hours a day looking at screens. Wow. And this includes gaming, television, and mobile phones. So imagine that, 6 hours out of their day. Okay.
Yeah, that is mind-boggling, and that is shocking. 6 hours of your day, where a child goes off to bed by 9 o'clock in the evening. They're back from school by 3 o'clock. They have a span of 6 hours, and having an average time of 6 hours in a day, is just something I can't wrap my head around. Um, and why I can't wrap my head around is, again, Blanka, I will put the question back at you. We often hear that there are many, many negative impacts of screen time, but I want you to tell our viewers from a scientific point of view, what is the research? What does the research say? What are these negative effects? Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to break this down into a couple of different aspects. So the first and very important thing to consider is how it affects their cognitive, social, and physical development, because obviously we all want what's best for our kids. And just knowing how screens impact these developmental areas is I think very important to be able to make conscious decisions. So excessive screen time in young children has been linked to increased risk of being overweight due to the sedentary behavior. There are delays in cognitive and physical development. They have weaker social skills and reduced ability to engage in real-world interactions. They have emotional challenges stemming from less human connection and higher risk of mental health issues such as anxiety and low mood and then depression. And it also reduces their attention span.
Wow. I mean, each of these is scary in itself, and then we have a bunch
Totally.
of these negative effects. And the thing which actually bothers me is research has shown, right, that it delays the cognitive and physical development of the child because of reduced physical activity, reduced social interaction, reduced emotional connection with other humans
Yeah.
or other children around them, right? I mean, I also hear a lot of people saying, a common concern being that, does this mean that the screen time, if my child has screen time, the screen time is what is making my child distracted or hyperactive? I mean, do you see changes in children which is due to the increased screen time? Or what is the cause and what is the effect?
Yes. So yes, I get what you're saying. And I think there is like this uproar that screens actually cause behavioral challenges such as ADHD or like neurodiversity. And there's one thing that I would like to highlight, that screens don't cause ADHD, but they can exacerbate ADHD type symptoms. So it has been shown that excessive screen use does reduce kids' attention span because of the stimulation. It makes it harder for children to focus on sustained real world tasks. They become increasingly distractible because of all the fast-paced content that their brain is adapting to. They are seeking constant stimulation. So that might be like your sensory seeking type of behavior that you see in your child. And it can also cause weaker executive functioning skills. So they might have more difficulty controlling their impulses, making decision, or with task prioritization. So specifically related to ADHD, these obviously all of the things that I've just talked about could also be symptoms of ADHD, right? And with the screens, they actually they just make the symptoms worse. But ADHD is not caused by screens, so you cannot get ADHD from spending too much time on screens, but you can exhibit ADHD type behaviors because of how your brain is interacting with the screens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that means that essentially, while ADHD is not caused by screens, the behavioral symptoms, or for a child who already has ADHD, has been diagnosed with ADHD, the symptoms get magnified. So it's
Yes,
not doing your child any good. At the end of the day, it is not helping your child to get calm or to remain calmer or
exactly.
behave in a certain way.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I would like to highlight here, that so using screens as a means of, having a quiet moment or calm, because just because your kid is glued to the screen and they're being quiet, it's not a healthy way of
relaxing, I guess.
Relaxing, yes, thank you. Yes, yes, exactly, because they're receiving constant visual and auditory stimulation, which then their brain doesn't have time to process. So try to think of other kinds of activities for your kids to relax rather than screens.
It almost seems like the sugar spike that children have. Think of the screen as not food, just like sugar is not food for your child. The screen is not relaxation for your child. So just like you have sugar spikes in children and hyperactivity just after they've had the glucose, sugar, it is similar to once they have watched the screen, it doesn't mean they will get calmer or they will be more relaxed. It would just be the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Is that a good
Yeah,
comparison?
and you might notice when your kids come off screens, I can definitely attest to this with my own kids, that they have a hard time coming off screens, even though they have limited time on screens. Whenever they do watch something and then it's over or the time's finished, then they do have a hard time coping with, we're moving on to something else. And then that it just requires different brain power from them. And it definitely, it is hard. So I'm curious to hear what our listeners have to say about this, if they've noticed anything.
Yeah, true. I mean, I would just like to add one more thing to that. There's, of course, this thing of where they're not relaxed and there is weaker executive function. It is also that they will feel, what I have observed, at least in students or in my house, is they will seem edgy or they will seem restless. I think that's the right word. And they are always trying to, what the brain is doing at that time, and what I feel as an educator is once they are off a screen, or even for my children, once they're off the screen, the brain is still trying to get that much amount of stimulation. It has still not relaxed. And once it is trying to do that, that essentially means they're trying to figure out what other sources of stimulation are there in the house around them, even though the screen is off now. And that is essentially.
And that's exactly what happens. And I'm so glad you bring this up, because the screens, they sort of desensitize the reward system. So because of the frequent exposure and all the quick changes and the videos and the colors and all that, that triggers quick dopamine surges. And it's very similar to addictive substances, actually. And it basically rewires your dopamine reward system. And that's exactly what you're explaining, that once you come off the screens, it's like you're in withdrawal. And that's why you're so fidgety and you're seeking constant more of that stimulation, because your brain has to come down from that high dopamine spikes and then come back to the baseline level, which it has to like reset sort of. And that takes time. And also together with that, we cannot, it can increase our stress responses because of the chronic screen exposure. It can alter our brain chemistry, and that can make us feel irritable, or we can have mood swings. So, and that bringing back the ADHD, you can mix the two together, right? Because there is overlap between the symptoms of like coming off screens and ADHD.
True. I can imagine it makes sense. I mean, it is ultimately all about what's happening in the chemical composition. At the end of the day, our behaviors are a reflection of the chemical changes that are happening and the neural pathways that are being targeted because of the external stimulation. So, it kind of actually is very straightforward if we step back a little bit and think of the science behind why a child behaves a certain way, and why is it that screens are usually suggested not to be given to younger children, because they are already developing those pathways, and you don't want to have this external stimulation which is going to wreak havoc in that entire building process in the brain.
Yes, and that's exactly why it becomes so addictive, because then you always want more and more of this. And actually, I think it might be a good time to talk about how we can identify when our kids become addicted. So what are some of the signs to look out for? Sonali, would you mind talking about that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I can say from the point of view of a classroom is, if you, of course, it is very difficult for, as an educator, to know how much time the children are spending on the screen at home. But some of the things which can be a signal or a symptom for the educators to realize is lack of focus, as we just discussed. If the child is always fidgety, if they're always lacking focus while they were not doing it some months ago, then has something changed in the background, which is outside of the school domain or the school environment. So that is one thing. The other thing which I can say from my observation of children who are closer at home, nephews and my daughter, is there is a definite correlation between sleep disruption and screen time. So, especially when there is screen time very close to the sleep time, the stimulation stays in the brain. It doesn't go off. It's like that afterglow that happens sometimes. So, because of which children's natural sleep pattern goes for a toss. They are tossing and turning and not able to sleep. So that is one of the things, which means that your child probably is starting to get addicted, and you need to be aware of what is happening and take some measures on reducing the screen time effect. I'm not saying that sleep disorders are only due to screen time, but it is definitely one of the symptoms of excessive screen time or beginning of screen addiction. The other is, of course, again, we talked about this, the cognitive effects. When there is too much stimulation happening for a child, there is a lack of sleep again. But beyond the sleep, there is also a lack of focus, emotional regulation. They are not able to behave. They lash out at you. They are short tempered. So, yeah, these are quite a few things which I think educators and also parents, isn't it, should be on the lookout for. If there is no obvious reason for the behavioral change, then maybe pause and see whether the screen time could be the culprit.
Yes, yes, and I think I'd just add one more thing to that, is that
Mm-hmm.
when you see that your kid is no longer interested in engaging in activities that are without
Yes.
screens, that's
Mm,
also like
true.
something that, okay, you might need to look into their screen use. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about the negative effects and the concerns around screens. So, as an educator, can you identify any benefits of screens? So we just don't. I don't want to make it sound all doom and gloom here.
It's not. I mean, that's why I started the whole episode. We started about on a positive note, right? That how can we make screens work for our children? So it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, of course, for example, screens do give the opportunity both to parents and educators for increased engagement, because you can have interactive experience with your students or with your children. You can introduce them to new topics through interesting videos, which may feel drab in the beginning for the students. So it can kickstart that interest. So yes, screen is not always doom and gloom. But having said that, what I do want to underscore is, um, definitely students below upper elementary do not need screens. They need to be out there playing, developing their cognitive abilities, building the neural networks which tie into what they are observing, sensing, and making those connections. So I don't feel that there is, not I think research has proven that you children below a certain age of 5 years or so do not need screen time. If at all they are exposed to screen time, again, we talked about the limits on how much that should be. And the second is, a passive slideshow doesn't account for interactive teaching. So if you're just showing a YouTube video and saying, okay, let's move on to the next video, that is not interactive engagement. It has to be a questioning on what you observe. The children need to reflect on what they have observed, make their key takeaways, write it down. Only then watching something makes sense. Else,
Mhm.
again, it ends up being a doom scrolling effect of teaching. So yes, there is a lot of opportunity if the screens are used in a smarter way, with awareness by the educators or even for parents at home. Actually, why how could you do it in the house at home, Blanka, if you were using a screen and you were trying to increase engagement?
Yeah, so before I answer, I just have a quick question to you. So you mentioned upper elementary. Can you give us like an age range for that? Because some of our viewers might be from different countries and different school
So
systems.
yeah, so I would say about up until 5 to 6 years of age, they don't need screens. Once they are about 5 years of age, you can slowly start introducing them for educational content again. But below that, till 4 years, I don't. Children do not need screens to learn.
Mm. Yeah, okay. Thanks for clarifying. So yeah, you asked about how we can
At
use
home, yeah.
screens in a positive way at home. And one thing that we do consciously as a family is we have these Friday night family movie nights. Not every Friday, it's not like a weekly thing, but then this is something that we've turned into a family connection time. So we gather around the sofa and we watch a movie together. So when you do this and you watch things together, it's exactly as you were pointing out with engaging the students. We can also talk about it. We can share the emotional load of what we see together. We can, if there's something that might be a little bit scary, for the kids, you are there to support them through those feelings. And it makes all the difference. So rather than them being disconnected and on their screens all by themselves, we're there together. And my kids love it. And they even look forward to, like, they make these little signs of like where the seating arrangement, how it is, and we make popcorn. And
Yes.
so we really turn it into a special thing, and they love it. And so that's one thing. And obviously, like for people who live far away from their families and friends, like our family we live abroad, so that's one of the means of communication we have with their grandparents, with their cousins. So obviously, like, we don't discourage any video chatting or any online talking and sharing voice messages. So that's all, like, obviously it's a good way to connect with the family if you are apart.
True. Actually, we've discussed a lot about the positives, the negatives, but I think what our viewers would also like to know is how do we set up rules in the house where saying no to screen time doesn't end up in a power struggle? And how do we inculcate that in our friends? How do we develop healthier screen habits for the children?
Yes, I think this is very important. And I have to say that it all starts with us. Like, we need to model healthy screen use habits, because our kids are constantly observing, watching us. And it's just, if they see us on our phones, if they see us taking our phones to the bathroom, to the bedroom, if we don't have a meal without our phones on the table, then that's what will be normal for them. So I also encourage parents to, whenever they're doing something on on their phones, because obviously we do many different things on our phones, from online banking, to paying tuition fees for music lessons or sports activities. There's an app for everything these days, so it's hard to go around not having a phone,
True.
right? So, and what I recommend for parents is to narrate what they're doing. So I'm on my phone putting in an address to Google Maps because I need the navigation. Then I'm just speaking out loud. Okay, I'm just opening Google Maps and I'm writing the address. So then we can, the ETA is 23 minutes. Okay, then we can leave in, I don't know, half an hour, and then we'll have time to get there. Whatever. So just speak out loud, because all your kids see is that you're glued to a screen. They don't know what you're doing on it, but you're disengaged. But if you start talking, then they'll feel part of the conversation, part of your life, rather than being disconnected. So
True. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I think also, like, in the interest of time, we're coming close to the 30 minutes. So can we give some practical tips on what parents and educators can do? I was wondering if you could kick this off.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I could do that. We can start off with Maybe, but the first is, I think, as an educator, I always mention this, and I'll mention it again. Encourage play, encourage outdoor activities, sports, human connection. In a world which is going to be driven by AI and technology, we need the human connection to be paramount. So let the children build that over them learning through a passive consumption of screen time content. So that's one, prioritize what is more important, and that is the human connection. The second is set clear limits, like reduce passive screen time. I just mentioned that if at all there is screen time, make it engaging, work with them, understand how, reflect on what they're observing, make it again about connections on what is the external stimuli. In fact, it was very interesting, Blanka, right? When we were talking a little while ago, you were also mentioning this strategy of using screen-free zones. Would you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so I absolutely, I'm a fan of not of creating these both physical and like time-wise these buffer zones of like, okay, like setting clear rules on, okay, we won't have phones when we're having a meal. We won't have phones 30 minutes before bedtime. No phones allowed in the bedroom. And then we also, because it's also disruptive for our own sleep, for our well-being. So I encourage us as adults to follow these rules as well. And yeah, so no gadgets in the bedroom, no TVs in the bedroom, because that reduces the temptation and it improves your sleep as well.
Yeah.
What is your take on parental controls?
Before parental controls, I love the idea of not having gadgets in the bedroom. We are not allowed to take even our laptops. We don't have a TV in the bedroom. Everything is outside. So the moment you enter your bedrooms, it is literally no gadgets. You do need that. And I'm so glad you mentioned it. In terms of parental control, I think a lot of the conversation that you can have with the child, of course, for the younger children, it is slightly different. And at times we do give gadgets to the younger children because of security issues and concerns, whether the child is safe. But I think making sure there is enough technology out there which you can utilize as a parent to make sure that the screen time and the content that the children are getting are under control. We will cover this more in the next episode because that is highly relevant to older children. In fact, for the younger children, for children younger than 16 years of age, the recommendation is there should be zero social media. There should be no smartphones under the age of 14. But yes, these are for children who are slightly older, and we'll cover it in more detail in the next episode. But parental anxiety is something actually, Blanka, that you work with a lot. So just elaborate on this one point. I think you would have many more experiences than I would as an educator. So do you want to elaborate on the parental anxiety part of how to overcome anxiety, yet not have a digital gadget to suppress
Yeah,
that
so
or
I think
solve for it?
yes, so I think one of the main pushes for smartphones from an early age is due to parental anxiety. And I'm not saying it's not a real thing. Obviously, it's coming from a well-intentioned place, because we all want to protect our children. We want them to be safe. And I see increased use, and this is not just my observations. It's there are clear statistics on how many parents track their kids, and then introducing smartphones at a much younger age than they would, because they want to track their kids. Well, first thing, I don't think that it's a reason to introduce smartphones younger just because you want to track them. There are other ways you can track your children if there are no other means to keep them safe. If you absolutely need to track them because that's how you work and you're not home when they get home from school, or I get it. Sometimes there's that need to know that your child is safe. In those cases, there are other devices that you can use with GPS coordinates, and that you can actually track them without the need of a smartphone. Also, you can buy them non-smartphones, like, the old ones
The
that
good old days of
exactly,
Nokia.
where you can phone and text, right? So you can just have a quick text exchange.
Yeah.
Did you make it home safe? Yes. Good. Okay. And that's it. So because the sooner you introduce smartphones, the more challenges you will face when you actually
Yes.
realize that you want to set limits.
Yes.
And then the later you do that, then you're introducing things step by step, and then gradually building the trust in your child and them in themselves on how we can use this in a smart and healthy way. So
So that's
I think that's my key message for today, is that we want to have open conversations about using phones, about my own struggles as well, because I admit it, that I find myself doom scrolling sometimes, and I'm not proud of it. And I think, well, hands up if you've never done that. And, because it is addictive, it is hard to put it down, and we're tired, we're overstimulated, and that's not the healthy way of decompressing. So we want, and I think the key thing is that we want them to feel comfortable coming to us if they see something that makes them feel uncomfortable, if someone interacts with them in a way that they don't know how to handle. We as their parents should be their primary point of contact in these cases. So I encourage you to have these open conversations, and then we're in this together. So let's
I agree, Blanca. I agree. And also, keeping children safe in the digital world is a topic by itself, which can take hours and hours. And we will have another episode where we talk of how to keep children safe in the digital world. It's not just about addiction. Today, we are focusing on why and how you can introduce, and at what point you should be introducing gadgets. But yes, at some point they will be on gadgets. They will be in the digital world. So we will have another the digital world. Blanca, would you like to summarize the key discussion points that we had today for our views? It is 5 minutes past the time, so
Yes,
yes.
we apologize for that. So yes, I think the key thing to remember is that moderation is key, and it is also easy to get addicted. So try to work with the balance, and see what works for you and your family. Try to set up some healthy ways of stress relief, like being outdoors as much as you can, having as much screen-free zones in the house and in terms of time as well as possible, and modeling. So it starts with us. So check in with your own screen use, and So I think that's. Would you add anything?
No, I think the whole summary for today is all these apps and everything that is there. It is meant to trick your brain into instant gratification and the dopamine release, and it is up to us as adults to be aware of it, because children can't be, and help them in developing healthy habits, whether it is towards screen or anything else for that matter.
Yeah.
And with that, we come to the end of today's episode on handling screen time with children. We have talked about why there are recommendations around screen time, why it may not be the best way to say that, oh, it does not matter whether he is on the phone, it's just a gadget. There are reasons why screen time needs to be managed for the children, whether young or slightly older kids. But I would like to open up the conversation to our viewers who might be out there. If you you want to share some of these things that you feel, yes, this has worked for me, please share them with us. Also, what are maybe some of the challenges that you want us to pick up in the next conversation, because the next episode is going to be a continuation of the same topic for older children. But if we get questions, we can pick it up in the beginning, isn't it, Blanca? We can pick up questions from our viewers. We
Yes,
can address
definitely.
those.
Feel free to message, either comment on the event description. Well, you can comment on this event, or you can send either Dr. Sonali or myself direct message. And yes, we would like to hear from you. We're doing these conversations to increase awareness, increase knowledge, and ultimately to build a future generation together.
We are all in it together.
We are.
I think, Blanka, you also have a very interesting announcement to make. So before we wrap
Yes.
up the session, please.
Yes. So if we have no comments right now, I just wanted to say that I have a very exciting masterclass coming up on Wednesday this week. It's called How to Get Your Kids to Listen Without Nagging, Yelling, or Threats. So I'm going to share some practical strategies that you can implement straight away on how to increase cooperation in your home so you can move through your day more easily. And so I will share the sign-up link in the comments below. So anyone who's interested, you can feel free to sign up there. There will be a recording. So if you can't attend live, the recording will be shared with you, but you still need to sign up.
Yeah, of course. We need to make some effort if you are going to get such valuable advice from Dr. Blanka. Well, that was a joke. But yes, so do sign up. She has very practical advice for parents, and they can be life-saving for many of us. So now with that, we come to the end of yet another episode. Thank you very much for listening in. We have been getting wonderful messages from all of you, which keeps us going to have these conversations and discuss the topics which are relevant for you and for us, and share the knowledge that we have, as well as learn from you and understand where we can help you the best. So thank you for being here. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, as Dr. Blanka already mentioned, if you want to see the recording, or on LinkedIn. And thank you for being here. We will see you all next month for part 2 of the same topic, how to manage screen time in young adults and teenagers. So that's going to be tricky. I'm sure many of you can relate to it, but we are doing our best. We are researching a lot, and we will try to compress that entire research that we do within a half an hour podcast or episode.
Yeah, we'll try to do better next time.
Thank you so much for being around.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sonali. And
bye.
Have a good day. Bye.